The imperfect subjunctive in Italian is a grammatical mood that expresses mental, emotional, and hypothetical situations in a past unreal frame, known in Italian as il congiuntivo imperfetto. In previous videos, I explained the role of the subjunctive, which will be applied in the same way here. Even so, in my conditional video, I presented Italian if clauses, which will be crucial in the imperfect subjunctive. Finally, we can see how to form the mood in this video, but it's not necessary to explain the function of the mood, because we should already know it from previous videos. So, the congiuntivo imperfetto appears in three main situations: past reporting of emotions, hypothetical and unreal situations, or if clauses, and politeness. To form the mood, we follow a basic pattern, where we take an infinitive, drop re, and add subjunctive endings that apply to all verbs. Essentially, such endings will always be the same for any verb, whether it's regular or irregular. Si, se, simo, ste, sero. Let's see the verb parlare, to speak. To conjugate parlare in the imperfect subjunctive, take the infinitive, drop re, and add the subjunctive endings. Once again, make sure that the action is in the stance of uncertainty. Io parlassi, tu parlassi, parlasse, parlassimo, parlaste, parlassero. Although conjugations are sufficient in specifying the subject, the conjugation for io and tu is repeated, so it's better to say it with the subject pronoun. Now, let's see a different verb, like credere, to believe. To conjugate credere, we follow the same pattern as before. Io credessi, tu credessi, credesse, credessimo, credeste, credessero. Now, let's see the verb dormire, to sleep. To conjugate dormire, follow the same pattern. Io dormissi, tu dormissi, dormisse, dormissimo, dormiste, dormissero. So, this is how regular verbs get conjugated in the congiuntivo imperfetto. However, we have to see how irregular verbs also work, and in this case, it's important to consider verb stems, because as I said before, imperfect subjunctive endings will always be the same for any verb. Because this mood is common in Italian speech, irregular verbs will be used a lot, so it's good to know what they look like and when to use them. The irregularity typically comes from the same stem changes that you could have found in previous Italian videos, especially from the remote past, so there are no new random forms. A good pattern to consider is to remember the dictionary stems of many irregular verbs, and then add s or is plus the endings. Unlike previous subjunctives, the congiuntivo imperfetto is more predictable, so we only need to memorize the stems of common irregular verbs, like essere, avere, fare, dire, andare, stare, venire, potere, dovere, volere, sapere, tenere, bere, rimanere, porre, dare. Looking at the chart, I decided to show the conjugations for the pronoun io, because the irregular conjugations simply change their stems. Once you know the stem of one conjugation, the rest follow the endings I showed before. Now, we can finally see some examples of when to use this mood. The main use is in reported past emotions, where the main verb is in a past tense, and the subordinate clause is in the imperfect subjunctive, like saying, pensavo che lui fosse stanco. Credevo che tu avessi ragione. The second use is hypothetical if clauses, which is a topic that I emphasized in my conditional video. So here, we can understand the importance of the subjunctive. We should remember that Italian has multiple types of if clauses, and most express unreal situations in the present or past. The formation follows se, meaning if, plus the imperfect subjunctive, and the result can use the present or past conditional. For these examples, we can have the phrases that I showed in the conditional video. Se fossi ricco, viaggerei. Se avessi studiato, avrei passato l'esame. The first sentence is in conditional type 2, where the condition is not true and the result is not real. The second phrase is in conditional type 3, showing the result as something that never happened, so it's an unreal situation. The third use of the imperfect subjunctive is politeness, or a softening of a tone. By using this mood, we make requests sound less direct, like saying, Volevo che mi aiutassi. Speravo che venissi. At last, the mood can also be triggered after certain conjunctions, when the main verb is in the past. Prima che, benché, affinché, etc. An example is Ti ho chiamato prima che tu partissi. On a final note, we can see some examples that are practical in everyday speech. Although it's a complicated mood, it's still used by native speakers in Italy, mainly for imagination, thoughts, and uncertainty. Pensavo che lui fosse a casa. Credevo che loro sapessero. Volevo che tu facessi attenzione. Se io potessi, lo farei. Overall, this is how the congiuntivo imperfetto fully works in Italian. And in the next video, we'll see the last subjunctive, which is the past perfect.